Like to start the recording. Go team. Okay. Hi everybody. I'm Charla. I use they them pronouns. I am one of the webinar committee team people. So kind of getting into it this year. Attended the last couple AEE and TAPG conferences. But yeah, just starting to get a little bit more involved in the community. But happy to be here. Um, we'll get some deeper, longer introductions as well. But Erin, I will pass it to you for some announcements.
Yeah, and then Katie, do you mind taking your slides down just for a quick sec, just so
Got it.
people can see while I'm talking to them?
Absolutely.
All right. So again, welcome everybody. So my name is Erin. I've been coordinating the webinar committee, but I also sit on the leadership council for TAPG right now. And we just have a lot going on. And so I wanted to take a quick minute and just do some TAPG general announcements. And then I will turn it back over to Charla to introduce Katie and talk about our webinar. But for those that can't make the webinar in person, and that may happen as we continue, we advertise the webinar that you can get the CTAS and CCAT credit. So I'm working with Fred Worrell right now from the Accreditation Council to just kind of figure out how we're going to do that. The Accreditation Council normally asks for some sort of documentation that you attended. So if you're in the webinar in person, it's pretty easy. We take attendance, we give you your certificate. If you do find that you can't make one, just be in contact with me. Right now, it's kind of looking like we would just ask for like a summary that you submit, and then we would issue you that certificate. That's kind of what we're doing, our idea, but we're just waiting for that final confirmation from the Accreditation Council. I have every confidence that we'll figure out a way, but I just wanted to make sure that people knew about that piece of it. The second thing I want people to know is that registration is open for the in-person pre-con for the AE International Conference. So if that is something that you're interested in attending, registration is open now. We also have a Mark Ames scholarship, and that is for first-time attendees to pre-con. So if you want to go to pre-con and finances are a challenge and you need a little help, please apply for that. I honestly forgot when the deadline is, and I forgot to write it down, but I will look for that while Katie is talking. And the other thing is we have in our presence Katie, who is one of our Heart of Adventure Therapy winners, award recipients, and those nominations are also open. So if you know somebody in our community who really embodies the heart of adventure therapy, those nominations are also open, and we would encourage and love for people to send in nominations. And then the last thing is our leadership council positions are in 3-year terms. So we have several people leaving the council this November. And so our council applications, if that's something that you are interested in, will also be going live in the next, I think we said the 17th or something like that, but it's soon. It's going to go on social media and then it'll go in a newsletter. So it's kind of a soft drop. But if you or anyone you think would be great for those positions, we would encourage you all to apply for the Leadership Council. And I think those are my announcements, Charlotte.
Okay. Awesome. So again, if you have not introduced yourself in the chat, feel free to do that. If you want to include pronouns and where you're coming from, any other little information you'd like to include there, feel free to put that in the chat, as well as if you could put your full name that you've registered with, either rename yourself in Zoom or put that in the chat, as Erin will be taking attendance, and we want to make sure everybody gets their certificates. So I have the pleasure of introducing Katie Asmus. Let me get over to the bio here. Too many screens. Uh, so Katie Asmus is the founder of the Somatic Nature Therapy Institute. And they are a well-respected guide in the fields of adventure and nature-based therapies, somatic trauma healing, and rites of passage work, both in the US and internationally. Katie has been guiding people in the outdoors for over 30 years, training therapists and healers for 25, and teaching graduate students in this work for more than 2 decades. Long before becoming a therapist, she was already leading nature-based ceremonies, spiritual retreats, and outdoor education programs. Ceremony has been a steady, living thread throughout her life and practices. Katie holds a graduate degree in somatic psychology and has taught ceremony and ritual creation to counseling psychology students for the past 20 years and continues to train professionals both online and outdoors. Through the Somatic Nature Therapy Institute, Katie now facilitates rites of passage training and experiences, sees therapy and coaching clients, and supports fellow practitioners through mentorship and guest teaching. Known for her warmth, integrity, and deep love of people, Katie weaves together the body's wisdom, present moment awareness, creative expression, and connection to the natural world. She often reminds us that inner work is world peace work, and that each of us holds the capacity to meet life's thresholds with presence, courage, and care. Uh, so the webinar topic specifically today is on bringing ceremony and ritual into your therapeutic work powerfully and responsibly. And this will count as 1 hour of conceptual knowledge in ATTA and 1 hour of ATTA interventions, which will also be noted on your certificate so that you kind of have that in a few different places if you're going for the CCAT or CTAS. Feel free to put questions in the chat for any acronyms or raise your hand or anything like that. And if not Erin or myself answering those questions, I'm sure somebody else will know the answer as well. But yeah, I will pass it over to Katie.
Thank you. So fun to be here and to be here with all of you and see some of your faces. I am going to be going back and forth between slides and then taking the slides off because I do like to see people's faces a little bit more. Um, and so I will start with a few slides here. I'm also going to need to, when I open them, get them in the present mode. Okay, there we go. So, my name is Katie Asmus. I use she, her pronouns. I am sitting and living in this moment in the land in the middle of the US that is the original lands of the Cheyenne, the Ute, and the Arapaho people, which is called also at this point Boulder, Colorado. I came here in 1997 to go to graduate school and never left. So definitely call this my home. And welcome to this particular webinar. The topic is bringing ceremony and ritual into your therapeutic work powerfully and responsibly. And um, here is the overview. I will say more about me and kind of my background in a little bit, but this is really what we're going to be doing today, what I'd love for you to get from this time. So, an acknowledgement around the why, what is the benefit of bringing ceremony into your therapeutic work? And by the way, to back up here, no matter what your current relationship is with ceremony, ritual, or rites of passage, you are welcome here. And we're going to be doing a process around your own relationship with creating ceremony, because for me, that's where we start. It's like a language or a relationship. And the stronger that we have relationship with that, the more confident we are to bring that into our work. So it's not really separate. Also, to normalize the uncertainty, the fear, the ethical questions that inevitably arise around, are we doing this responsibly? Are we respectfully, not culturally appropriating? How do we create ceremony when we don't all have shared backgrounds, shared cultural experiences, etc.? This is a huge part of the work that I do in the world. Offer a foundational framework for enacting, actually creating and enacting personally meaningful, culturally relevant ceremony and rituals for yourself and your clients. define all of that. And then invite you into the practice of crafting a ceremony by walking you through the steps today. So there is a process that I go through when I help people create ceremonies, my clients and students, and it's kind of a checklist. There is, in fact, even I have a 20-page ceremony guide I'll tell you at the end if you want a copy of it. And it really is a bunch of different questions, considerations that you may or may not think about. So we'll kind of do a little process, and you are free to do that ceremony for yourself afterwards or not. Hopefully, it will inspire you just going through that process. And then also leave you with additional resources to deepen into this if you are called to. And of course, also time for Q&A. So that's what we have on the agenda. We have 2 hours. I will probably take the 2 hours, just so you know. And again, some of this will be experiential, and I'll also have you go into breakout groups for a brief bit of time after we do the ceremony creation, just to have a little discussion about it. So I don't think I'm going to do an official break. So feel free to take care of your needs throughout our time together. And I always love when I'm starting a class, a therapy session, a coaching session, a webinar, presentation, to invite us all into some moments of breath and pause, and really just to shift gears from where we've been to this particular time and space. So, with that, I'm going to invite us into a little bit of a guided meditation. So see what your body needs here to get a little bit more comfortable. If you want to do a little stretching or shifting, maybe a little yawning, leaning back, whatever feels good. As you notice, even just saying hello to your body and the particular state of you that is present in this moment. If it feels comfortable for you, I want to invite you to bring your attention inward. So you might close your eyes or have a soft gaze, really, whatever just helps you to pause and feel you here for a few moments. And as we pause, allowing your attention to go to the felt sense of ground beneath you. So that might be the ground beneath your feet, or the seat beneath you and or behind you. And enjoying a few moments of pause in your day to primarily feel the felt sense of ground and your breath. And just letting that felt sense bring you bit by bit into this particular moment even more here now. And as you, feel your own intention for coming here today. Actually, you might have a thought about what that is. You might just have a felt sense in your heart, curiosity, just trusting whatever's present as you connect in with your draw, your intention for being here. And then once again, just bringing your attention to ground, and in your awareness, and even if your eyes are closed, sensing down to the earth beneath you, the earth beneath wherever you are sitting, the building that you're sitting on, the earth that surrounds you. And just sensing out to all the beings that you are intertwined with, inextricably intertwined with. The tree and the plant beings nearby that you exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide breath with. Birds, the creepy crawlies, even the sunshine, the clouds. And in whatever way feels right for you, just taking a few moments of breath and honor and acknowledgement for all these beings, the earth, nature that is right here in your ecosystem, wherever you're sitting. Mm. And then panning out a bit and connecting in with all that supports you in your life, known and unknown, seen and unseen, the humans, the animals, nature beings, maybe the ancestors or the spiritual beings. Again, just taking a few moments of breath and acknowledgement just to connect in there. And feeling as we gather together today, just that may this serve us, may this serve more than us, and may you bring your curiosity to this space. And as you're ready, you can slowly, gently begin to transition into our group space together. So you might slowly, gently let a little light in your eyes, or wiggle your fingers and toes a little bit. And as we come back together, just going to let you know that I'm going to stop screen sharing. So we will see each other again in a moment. Okay. And now I just need to find my, get out of full screen mode. Okay. So, welcome to this time together. This is one of my favorite topics on the planet. Ceremony, ritual, rites of passage. How do we do it responsibly? How do we bring it into our work? And there are many different paradigms of creating ceremony, of what that means, depending on what culture you're from, what spiritual background you're from. And what I'm going to do, or what I'm going to share with you, is really has the intention of looking at something pan-cultural. Really, it's not about a particular ceremony at all, but it's about giving you and bringing in the bones of ceremony, the bones that actually exist in ceremony throughout cultures, and an invitation to fill those bones in with what has meaning to you. So I always say, how do we create personally meaningful, culturally relevant ceremonies and rites of passage? And so that's what we are going to be looking at today. So a few, and some of the common things that people ask are, am I allowed to do this? How do I do this again responsibly without culturally appropriating? I don't want to do it wrong. And also questions about if I don't do ceremony all the time, or if I'm not embedded in a particular cultural practices, then what do I do? Also, where do I begin? So I am curious. I would love to ask you, if you're open, just to type in the chat, maybe a sentence or two about what brought you here, or what are the questions you're holding? What are you coming with today? Just to hear you, feel you. And then I'll do a little more intro of me and my background here with this. And thanks everyone for also already introducing yourself. So good to read your voice and see where you're coming from. Any questions, intentions? Oh, here we go. Okay, great. I'm going to just read them out loud too, just so we could hear that's kind of what's in the field. So reconnect with myself, help facilitating graduation of services or a shift in goals with my clients. Great, thank you. Anything else anybody wants to share? What is bringing you here, or what questions are you holding? Okay, thank you. As someone who loves ritual, particularly nature-based spirituality, I'm particularly interested in how to help clients access ceremony in a way that isn't me just pushing my specific style. Cool. I'm just intrigued and want to hear ideas of how to bring ceremony into client work with individuals. Great. Curious to learn more frameworks, both to use personally and professionally. Oh, recent Naropa grad. Yay. I'm a Naropa grad. Want to get, let's see, more comfortable developing meaningful ceremony for myself and clients. Great. Get to know more knowledge and confidence to implement in sessions. I love ceremony and ritual and interested in hearing how you and others in the room bring this into your practice. Great. I'm exploring different expressions of adventure and nature therapy approaches, student of Prescott College. Great. Thanks, y'all. It's interesting as I read these, I've been a teacher of graduate students and professionals for over 20 years, 20 some years. And I can't tell you how many times people have asked me, am I allowed to bring ceremony and ritual into the therapeutic space? And it is more cutting edge. It is, less researched practices. And of course, I say, yes, of course, this is part of who we are as humans. So we're including, it's a holistic intervention, a holistic part of our humanness that we get to include, which is great. Great. Curious and looking to get more knowledge. Okay, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So I'll share a little bit about myself and my own also cultural background and experience with ceremony, ritual, rites of passage. I also want to share that I have been a part of AEE for 30 years and part of TAPG for about 23 years. Actually, the first time I went to TAPG, they invited me to be the keynote speaker on somatic trauma work, which was my thesis work at Naropa University. And then I just never stopped coming. So it's so special to be here and love this community. So, yeah, I am Katie Asmus, and I am a lover of people, of the natural world, of our humanness, of the growth and development that we are in for our entire lives. And in the world, I am a psychotherapist, I'm a coach. I also pretty much therapeutic coaching and career coaching, or I would say I mentor people to do the things that I do. I've taught graduate school at Naropa in the wilderness therapy, nature-based therapy, somatic therapy programs since 2002. And I was teaching at Prescott College from about 2003 until about 3 or 4 years ago. So have a lot of time in the wilderness, a lot of time in nature with students. So much fun to be in that creative space together. Ceremony has been a big part of my personal life as well as my professional life. So when I'm teaching this in particular, people are always asking me, what are you rooted in? Like, where did you come from? What's your cultural background and practices? And I will say, like, the big picture answer is that I have developed really a relationship with spirituality, with ceremony throughout my whole life. And that has happened in many different ways. So, um, so the first thing is I grew up Catholic. I grew up in a very liberal, volunteer focused Catholic family and community with ancestry German, Irish, strong German, Irish roots, also Austrian, English, Scotch, Welsh, Swedish. So lots of Western European cultures. And my family loved to gather. My family loved to celebrate, and we're always making up ceremonies. And the biggest one that I love telling people about is Christmas. And I was the oldest grandchild on both sides. And my parents, when Christmas was happening, they said, we want our children to know the real meaning of Christmas, which to them was Jesus's birthday. And so they started reading these these parables the night before on Christmas Eve, and then we'd sing happy birthday to Jesus. And as time went on and more children were born into our family, we did this tradition for 45 years. And we just stopped when actually my parents moved out of town and my grandmother passed away 7 years ago. So for the first like 45, 47 years of my life, we did this. And it became that the youngest to oldest would read a special thing. And then we would sing happy birthday to Jesus. And then we would dance to like some rap song. And my grandma would dance. And we just like kept adding on these rituals. And then we had something the next morning we always did. And the next night. And then we had like game night. So I love saying that this was just something that was part of my family, my culture, my tradition, that as you can hear, that wasn't all about Catholicism at all. And then I, starting in high school, became involved in retreats through the church and through my high school. And so all through high school and college, I went to and led spiritual retreats, like youth group retreats. And it was incredible because they gave us this task to create ceremonies or create experiential exercises really with each other to reflect on and deepen around very meaningful things in our lives, like friendships, family, God. I gave a talk once called on Carpe Diem, on Seize the Day. So there was so much creativity and invitation into really creating experiences to invite people to deepen into what had meaning to them in community in ceremonial ways. And then I started working in the outdoor education field when I was 19, and I started working in camps and programs such as Outward Bound. And in those experiences, we're spending intensive time outside. We're having campfires. We're sending people on solos. We're thinking about, what are we letting go of? What are we stepping into? And so ceremony was something that I just started doing naturally and was also a part of those communities. And again, we were really making those ceremonies up, thinking about what is the intention and how do we help people move even more toward that intention. Um, and then I went to graduate school at the Naropa University, which is a Buddhist founded university. And I am not a practicing Buddhist or practicing Catholic any longer, but at Naropa University, it's steeped in ritual and ceremony from the Buddhist tradition, including with every single meeting that we ever have, whether it's two people or a whole class, we start with about 5 minutes of sitting meditation and a bow in. So, again, I'll just say ceremony and ritual have been an integral part of my life. And um, as I started teaching, really, it helped me to articulate more and more, what am I doing? What do I believe? How do I support other people in bringing this into their life and work if they don't have the same background as me, or even if they don't necessarily have a particular spiritual tradition or cultural ceremonies that they resonate with? And as somebody living in North America, in what is called the US, this is a place where we come from so many different backgrounds, so many different cultures, so many different spiritual traditions, that there aren't a lot of really deep shared ceremonies that we hold collectively. Obviously, we have graduations and many of us have birthday parties, but There's so many different ways that we celebrate these things. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give a little bit of an overview of what am I talking about when I'm talking about these words, ceremony, ritual, rites of passage. These words are used differently in different traditions, in the different literature. So there's no right or wrong, but I just want to get on the same page so that you know what I am talking about. And then talk a little bit about what do I mean when I say personally meaningful, culturally relevant ceremony rites of passage. And then we're going to look at the bones of creating ceremony and do a little bit of ceremony creation, walk through that process. So I'm going to screen share again in a moment. Okay. Okay, let me get it in present mode. Okay, can you see? Okay, great. So here we are. So ceremony, ritual, rites of passage. Um, Here are the definitions that I'm using. So first of all, ritual and ceremony, those terms are sometimes used interchangeably. I use them differently just to kind of delineate, but again, that's not right or wrong here. So when I talk about ritual, I think about any act performed mindfully with a clear intention or purpose. And that can be so many different things. It could be spiritual, it might not be spiritual. Examples of that would be a prayer or a meditation that you do on a regular basis, maybe a morning walk or a morning drink ritual like a coffee or tea. And one of the things about ritual is it serves to shift our states. When we do this thing over and over, it tells our body and mind to shift. So, for instance, I do have a morning tea ritual. I drink mate, and I started doing that because I'm not a morning person. And I would wake up and I'd sit down on the couch, and my brain wasn't working. I'd be like, "What am I doing?" And then I'd go, "Okay, I'm just gonna lean over," and then fall back asleep. So when I discovered mate, and I drink it with the gourd and the bombilla, and so it's a process. And now when I get up, I've actually been doing this since 2004, so a very long time now, 21 years, pretty much every morning. I know what to do. I don't have to think about it. And so as my body goes through those motions, I start to wake up. So whatever it is, rituals help us with some intention, conscious or unconscious, and it helps us shift states. I think of a ritual as something we do over and over and over again. That's how I'm using this term. So we do this all the time. We all have rituals, whether we're doing them intentionally or not, but we're gaining a benefit from them in some way. We are not going to talk much today about ritual, though I will say, as I know many of you are therapists or therapeutic practitioners, I have tons of rituals I do with my clients. I would say I always begin with a grounding, and with each person it's slightly different, and I always end in the same way. I say, is there anything you want to remember, mark, or ask, remember, or mark from today? So it helps us orient to the session. We're beginning, we're ending, we're dropping in. So rituals are common, and most people will, that resonates with them in their life if you're bringing that also into your work with people. So ceremony, this term ceremony, the way that I'm using it here is this is the definition I use: an intentional action or set of actions done in support of a clear intention. I know that is very general, but I'm going to say that again. An intentional action or set of actions, typically I think it's more than one, but not necessarily, done in support of a clear intention. So we're putting our energy, we're putting our attention on something. And I think about ceremony as planting seeds that we're saying, I intend to whatever it is. I intend to be more present today. I intend to let go of being in control. I intend to, whatever that is, just step into my power more. So, what we put our attention on grows. We know this in physics, metaphysics, psychology, all sorts of different studies. What we put our attention on grows. So, I think about ceremony as planting a seed. And once we've planted that seed, we've done that ceremony, we've actually put a life in motion. The more that we water it, the more that we tend to it, it might actually grow quicker or more healthy. And we've put something in motion. So often a ceremony has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So there's a clear, okay, I'm starting and now it's over. It's contained within a particular time frame and generally marks one or more of the stages of a rite of passage. And I'll speak more about rite of passage in a moment. Um, Let me just see if there's anything else I want to say about ceremony. I think not right now. I'm going to go into it actually a little bit more in a moment. So, okay, rite of passage. What is rite of passage? This is how many people? Well, I can only see 5 of us, so I won't ask you this question. Do you know what rite of passage is? This is a term that is coined by Arnold van Gennep, who was a white European anthropologist in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. And he was studying cultures across time and looking at their ceremonies, essentially, their markings of significant life transitions. And what he noticed, well, what he was noticing is that most, if not all, most cultures throughout time did particular ceremonies. I mean, if you go to history museums, we have, the ceremonial items from the ancient Egyptians and people around the world, right? We find their clothing and their objects that they used ceremonially. So he recognized that this was a pretty universal thing, and he coined the term rite of passage to be the rite or the ritual or the ceremony that marks some kind of transition, some kind of life transition, typically from one stage of life to another and or some role. We're taking on a different role. So the rite of passage was the ceremony itself. And I'll say these days we use this word a lot more broadly to acknowledge kind of something that happens over time. So maybe becoming an adolescent, we could have like a ceremony, but we might also just say, wow, that year was really hard. That year was a rite of passage. Aaron, did you want to?
Well, I think you just answered my question. I was wondering, like, ceremony has that beginning, middle, and end, where it feels like rite of passage could be more reflective. Like I
Ooh,
might not have realized I had a rite of passage, but then upon reflection, it's a turning point. So I'm just curious about the time bound piece between ceremony and rite of passage.
yeah, I think exactly. So this is why I use it in all of the ways, rite of passage, but this is where ceremony is time bound. So that's why we're going to be talking about that specifically today. And often in a rite of passage, again, it could just be like I look back and I say, wow, my life is totally different from going through that experience, from having that car accident, from having that breakup, from having or something good happening. Like I am a different person because that happened. And it is a process, to get to the other side of it, if we do get to the other side. And it changes our identity. It changes our experience of itself, of ourselves. And ceremony, with these definitions that I'm using, often ceremony supports us in moving through life transitions, supports us in more consciously moving through those rites of passage. Technically, from the definition, you could call a ceremony a rite of passage, or we could just say ceremony supports us in our rites of passages, in our life transitions. So again, I want to say these terms are used differently, but this is sort of how I think about it. And in the way that I engage with it. So there is some overlap. I will now read the actual bullet points. I've just talked off the top of my head here. So the process that marks the transition from one phase of life to another. So as you see, even right here, it says the process. So that might be a ceremony. It might just be the whole process that actually marked the transition. Turning points in our life when we go through key changes where our identity, behaviors, choices, and or roles change. So many cultures have a rite of passage for, well, now we have adolescence, becoming an adolescent, like a quinceanera or a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, different like coming of age ceremonies. The term adolescence and the concept of adolescence is pretty new. Earth-based cultures in the further past would have ceremonies, rites of passage, marking childhood to adulthood, which was often going out on the land for an extended solo period of time to survive, to learn ways of hunting, to learn ways of, creating shelter, whatever that might be. And then coming back, there's a new role. There's a new role in the community. There's a new role in the world. So obviously, sometimes that's part of our rite of passage. Sometimes it's not, but that's one example. So, oh yeah, I already wrote that here. So going out and then there's a clear before and a clear after. What does life look like? What are your roles? What are your responsibilities? How are people maybe even treating you in a different way? So again, we can hold this term loosely. Okay. Oops. So now going back to ceremony. So all of this, putting this in context today, we're going to more specifically focus on ceremony. How do we bring that into our therapeutic work? First of all, well, I want to say I think about therapy as a ceremony. Typically, people come in, actually, yeah, well, people come in because they're in the middle of something. They're kind of at their wits' end, or they say, I need help. I need help navigating this thing. So I'll come back to that in a moment, but I think there's so much space to create honoring and markings within the context of therapeutic work because it's full of people's life transitions. And again, ceremony is really a way of supporting that movement, supporting the engagement with the questions that naturally arise when we're in the in-between. I'll talk more about the stages in a moment. But some key pieces about ceremony. So ceremony can be simple or grand, spontaneous or planned. I always say that. Like it can be spontaneous. It could be like, I'm going to say thank you to the universe right now because I have so much gratitude in my heart. That might feel like a ceremony because I'm having a conversation here with the sacred other. Or it could be planned, obviously, for days or weeks or even years. Something like a wedding, right? That often takes, well, the big ones take a lot of planning. So simple or grand, spontaneous or planned. I think about ceremony as a conversation with the sacred other, whatever that is for you. So that could be God, spirit, the earth, helping spirits, your own higher self, your own inner wisdom that you're evoking and saying yes to. But we're expanding our local frontal cortex consciousness to being in connection with something greater, some greater possibility, greater support, greater wisdom, etc. Ceremony is saying yes to what is. So when we create ceremony, we're not making something random up. We're looking at what does actually have meaning in our lives and what's worth putting our attention toward. Again, this is a little bit trickier when we're doing community ceremony because the ceremony itself is going to have a different meaning for each person. where we are with the intention of the ceremony is going to be different for each person, but we can still do, obviously, community ceremony. But it's about saying yes to what is important in our lives. It's the process of opening, again, to greater wisdom, flow, and knowing, that greater expansiveness. It's a stance. It's a marking of something important in life or something important to your heart, often moving from one stage of life to another, or again, acknowledging, marking, supporting a change in an aspect of your identity. Ultimately, it's a language that we can become fluent in, like I said earlier, truly. So the bottom line is the more that you experiment with, practice, create ceremony for yourself, the more comfortable, confident, spontaneous you will feel doing that with others. And so this is an invitation into that today. Okay. Um, Actually, uh, before I go into that, I want to say a couple more things that I didn't make a slide on this. I usually do, but rites of passage. So I want to go back to rites of passage for a moment because this directly ties into ceremony creation. There are 3 stages in a rite of passage as coined by Van Genup. And that is, it has many different names. These 3 stages have different names in different paradigms, different cultures. I heard Meredith Little, who was one of the founders of the School of Lost Borders in California, in a talk one time, give these names, which I've always loved. The first stage of a rite of passage is death, the ending. The second stage is the no name stage. I'm not who I was before. I'm not who I'm becoming. I'm wandering through the desert. I'm in the messy middle. I have no idea where I'm going or like what that's going to look like on the other side. And the third stage is rebirth. So death, no name, rebirth. Other terms that I often use based on different paradigms I've worked with and studied. The first stage being severance. We're severing or letting go of the old way of being. Sometimes that's choiceful. I leave a job, I graduate, right? I'm stepping into the next stage of my life. Sometimes that's not. So growth and development, where, I can't stay a child. I'm going to keep moving on. Or maybe there's something that happens to us. There's a loss, a major loss that we didn't choose, a death, an accident, a trauma, something like that. So there's a loss of an old way of being, slow or quickly choice or not choice. And that puts us into a period or an aspect of unknown in our lives, right? And so we can be in all these different stages at once. We could be in one stage in our career, we could be in one stage in our intimate relationship, another stage, with our family. So we're in the middle, and then as we're in the middle, typically the middle stage, the liminal, that's the word that I like to use. Liminal, neither here nor there, not who I was, not who I'm become, is typically really uncomfortable. Many people just want to get through, and in our world these days where everything's like quick fix, get it on the internet, buy it now, have it delivered, blah, 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 right? It's like we do not have patience for discomfort, to hang out in the discomfort. Yet it is required to hang out in the liminal, to engage it, to listen to our hearts, to ask the universe for help, to ask for feedback from our community, to keep listening until we find our way through in a way that's authentic, that's meaningful, that is often when we come out the other side into the word that I use is incorporation or bringing it into our body, that new way, the rebirth, that it's coming from all of the exploration, all of the listening, all of the work, all of the clarity that we've gained through hanging out in the unknown. So those are the stages of a transition and of a rite of passage: severance, liminal, middle, rebirth, or incorporation. Bringing this new way into our body is what incorporation means. And ceremony, two things. Ceremony, one, often marks one of those stages. Sometimes more than one are included within the context of the ceremony. So, like we'll say a marriage ceremony or commitment ceremony is a saying yes. It's a stepping in. It's actually a ceremony of incorporation, even though any new identity we take on actually takes us a while to integrate, to bring into our body. So it's the marking of I'm taking on a new identity, I'm living in a new way. But again, that's just the ceremony. Then that continues to grow. We water the seeds through time. So again, typically we do often I do a lot of helping people create their marriage and commitment ceremonies. It's one of my favorite things to do, help them create like personally meaningful, culturally relevant ceremonies. And so sometimes couples will come to me and say, will you help us create this? Will you help us prepare? And so one of the things that I have done with many couples is ask them if they would like to do a severance ceremony for their singlehood before their wedding. And so a common way that I do this is I have them either, come with me out on the land, or I'll help them create this for themselves. Go do solo time and have them do a little ceremony around acknowledging, what was good about not being coupled, like what was good about being single, and what are they actually letting go of? What are they sacrificing in order to say yes to this union, to this connection, to this commitment? And so they do that, and then they come back together after they've done that solo with, coming in, why am I doing this now? What am I committing to? What am I bringing in of myself? What am I grateful for you? So I share that because often, what we're focusing on is the incorporation ceremony, similar to giving birth or, becoming a parent. Often what we're focused on is this new way and celebrating this new way. But whenever we have a major life transition, there is loss. There is loss. There is a great book called Transitions by William Bridges, and he was a psychologist. I don't know if he's alive anymore. But there are many editions of this. And he talks about therapy through the stages of rite of passage. And he has all these stories about clients who they thought, they're excited, they got a new job, a promotion, or what have you. And in the end, there were all these losses that they hadn't accounted for. And so, really bringing in the importance of recognizing that and grieving, and really just making space, even in the celebratory experiences, for what is ending in the old way of being. I love this paradigm because I feel like it really acknowledges the complexities of life change and makes space for that. The other piece I wanted to say is that also within the context of rite of passage, ceremony helps us be in it. It helps us engage all of the emotions. It helps us engage the in between, right? In the liminal, when there's not a lot to do, it gives us something to do, which could be, okay, what do I still need to let go of more so that I can get closer to knowing who I am now? Or how do I ask the questions? That could be the ceremony of asking the questions. Okay, we'll get more into that in a little bit when we do a little ceremony creation. Um, if you have a question like in the middle of my talking, especially if you have a clarification, just raise your hand here. Okay, this is the last, two more slides, and then I'm going to stop screen sharing here. So how do we create personally meaningful, culturally relevant ceremonies and rites of passage? So I would like to share that let's see, how many years ago was this? About 9 years ago, I was at, and oh, no, it wasn't. It was 7 years ago. I was at an international adventure therapy conference in Australia. I think it was about 7 years ago. And I presented on this. I co-presented on this topic with a friend and colleague and actually ex-student uh, who her name is now Hoyatea Bryson. She is born and raised in Australia, and her mother is Maori. And she has worked with First Nations people in at least 3 different countries very closely. She has gone through her entire Maori community rite of passage, is very embedded in the ways in their practices. And we presented on this. How do we create personally meaningful, culturally relevant rites of passage, ceremonies and rites of passage? And we had like 100 people that came to our presentation, and it sparked us to create an online global training, 9-month global training, which we've been doing now since 2000. And so this question is so near and dear to my heart, and we have endless conversations about this because it is really important to me to do this responsibly, to not appropriate. So I say all that to say I have spent hundreds of hours thinking about this, talking about this. Obviously, this is very simple here, and we can get so complex and nuanced, but here's the very simple overview. Um, Personally meaningful. You clearly know your intention and your why. Why am I doing this? What's the point? I'm not just doing something because I saw somebody do this on TV. I'm doing this because actually I want to mark something that has meaning in my life. You have some sort of emotion, desire, distress, awe, gratitude, or energy around this intention. So often there's a like little zing, or there's tears, or when you think about like, wow, this is something that's really important to me. This is something that needs marked. And often when I'm sitting with someone in therapy or in another in context, and they're struggling with something and there's emotion, that is a time sometimes when it occurs to me maybe a ceremony would be supportive here, a personally created ceremony. And if that resonates, often there are tears, there are chills, there's excitement, there's some sort of energy that comes through. It's like, oh, this does need some support. So, um, so this thing, this identity, the situation, longing, accomplishment, etc., matters to you, and it's worth pausing to honor. And it could be simple. It could be a simple transition. It could be a simple ceremony, but there's something that is worth taking a moment to pause and honor. So that is personally meaningful. And then culturally relevant, I'm gonna, yes, Carolyn. Oh, Carolyn's coming in. Sorry, I thought she was raising her hand. Okay. Um, Culturally relevant. Okay. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So when we teach this, we really look at culture as a very big concept. It is not just your cultural heritage. Culture is all of the things, all of the places, all of the relationships, all of the land you've had relationship with, the communities that you've been a part of, the teachers that you've studied with. What has influenced your personal cultural knowledge, experiences, etc.? So that does include what lineages, what cultures or religions do you have roots in? So I shared I grew up Catholic. I do not practice Catholicism in my life any longer. However, it it was the container that developed my relationship with something greater than myself, and with the practices of spontaneous prayer and like asking for support, and again gave me permission to create processes. So there's that. Again, where you live. So maybe you grew up in a different country or culture than your heritage is, and that's what you've known. That's what you've practiced. This is in the fibers of your being at this point. Communities you are a part of or have been a part of. And I will just say, of course, this is very nuanced because um, where did the practices come from in the communities that we have been a part of? So there's, probably many of us have done yoga in our lives. Yoga comes from the East. There are many different traditions of yoga. It is controversial for some people, is this a taken practice? And now there's so many different ways of practicing. So there are a lot of nuances we could have conversations around. One of the things that my colleague Hoyatea talks about a lot is how are you in relationship with these practices? So have you studied them? If you bring them in to a group, do you talk about the history of them? If you have studied with an elder, in a tradition, have they given you permission to work with particular practices? And is that okay with the bigger lineage? Are you still in relationship with them? So this is complex, and I'm not going to go into this um, more deeply today, but I want to acknowledge that piece and in the bigger way say our culture is very multifaceted, very, very multifaceted. Okay, so ceremony is a language. It's also a process where there's a balance of planning, aka structure, and room for the spirit to move or spontaneity. Malidoma Somé, who is one of the teachers that I've been influenced by, if you don't, he has passed away. He is from the Dagara tradition and tribe in South, in Africa, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting Nairobi. Um, and he came to the West and was a teacher of ceremony and ritual for Westerners, for people around the world, around really bringing the sacred, meaningful sacred into life. So he says, anyway, that was a tangent, but he says that ceremony is part planned and part room for the spirit to move. So we create it. We have some sort of plan, often, unless it's all spontaneous. But then we also just make room for something to come through our hearts, to sing a song, for the bird to land right in front of us, and then to pause and take that in. So it's a conversation that we're having with the sacred other, with something greater than ourselves. Room for the spirit to move or space to follow your heart. Okay. So I craft ceremony, and then I'm going to pause and we're going to do a little bit of exploration of this. So, to bring attention to a life transition or an aspect of the transition that deserves attention, to do something to stay present and keep going when there's nothing else to do, like I said, in the liminal, to embody your intention in order to feel it in your bones. It's a full body experience of saying yes to what is. We're speaking it, we're singing it, we're crying it, we're doing an action in support of a desire or an intention. To be and feel supported by a greater web of life, to give space to what needs to be seen, heard, felt, spoken, or known, and to celebrate and or close maybe a chapter of life. Those are some of the reasons why we might create ceremony. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing, just FYI. And I need to go back and connect with my notes here. Okay, actually, I just want to pause and have us take a few breaths and just feel what's present in you from this time so far, from all the things I've been speaking into the space. Any images coming up, or yeah, and I would actually just love to invite, if anybody feels, if there's anything you want to speak or ask into the space here before I keep going. No.
guess I'll just say that I appreciate the expansion of the idea of what culture is, beyond the more, I think, uh, more specific and limited view as, heritage or just limited to place. I can see how this expansion can then help a person who may feel more or less connected to these different aspects of their culture be able to find something, connect to something that allows them to, you know, create personally meaningful ceremony. That's really
Ex-
cool.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Mm.
Great. Anything else anybody wants to speak or ask? Okay. Well, we're going to do a little ceremony creation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the process, obviously pretty quickly. And so there's no real expectation, but I want to have you just sort of engage these considerations. So I want to invite you to have a journal or something to write with or type on. And I'm going to invite you into a little bit of a reflection here in a moment. Um, and I will say this process again, I have a guide that I'll just tell you where to get it at the end of this. It's free, but it's go to our Rites of Passage website and download it. Okay. But for now, go ahead and get your journal. I am going to screen share again now. Let's see. If you need to go to the bathroom, this is a good moment while people are getting journals and okay. Okay, can you see my screen? Yeah. Okay, great. So another little piece, and then we're going to go through these steps. So again, I'll just say my colleague Hoya and I created what we created these pillars. So we say here again the bones. These are the bones of ceremony, and then we fill in the bones. And four of the key pieces, especially when we're planning it. If we're not planning it, if it's spontaneous, it's a little bit different. Um, but when we're planning it, the first thing is a clear intention. This is number one, always number one, because the intention guides everything. It guides what we do, when we do it, why we do it, how we do it, all of the things. It is the energy. It's the seed that we are planting in the universe. So we have to know, why are we doing this? So if you're facilitating a ceremony for a person or a group, you have to say, this is what the intention is. This is why we're doing it, because it also helps align our mind with our body and our spirit and puts that energy more clearly toward the intention. So the first piece is really clearly defining an intention, and everything follows from there. The next three um, aren't necessarily in this order, but here we go. Um, a big piece is scheduling it. So a date and place. When are you going to do it and where? And I say, put it in your calendar. And once it's in the calendar, we have committed. There's an additional commitment. And I love to say, when you commit to the ceremony begins. So I lead wilderness in solo time, inner quests. And when people sign up, when they put in their application and then say yes and deposit, we're like, the ceremony begins. Notice what starts happening in your life. So by the time you get to the ceremony, often something is unfolded, something ahas have been coming, synchronicities have been happening. So the scheduling it is actually critical. It starts the energy in motion. It is amazing. Okay. Another one is um, are symbols and symbolic actions. So here's where we bring in, well, the whole thing, we bring in personally meaningful, culturally relevant experiences, but symbols and symbolic actions. What are the items that you want to be there with you? And that could be items that are meaningful, like my grandmother gave me this special locket or scarf, and I'm going to wear this to feel her there with me. Or it could be this, I'm bringing this letter to burn. And so the letter is the symbol, the symbolic action, actually, that I'm get, or the symbol and the symbolic action is the burning. So then we do something, we let go, we ask a question, we step in, we light a candle. So those are symbols and symbolic actions that live out the intention for the ceremony. We're going to get more into this. And then the last piece is community. Who or what supports you? And we like to look very broadly at what does community mean? It could be the humans. And when we're in life transition, it is typically very helpful to have people that know and love us or have gone this path before, or who can hold some sense of unconditional positive regard as we're going through this. So, absolutely, community of humans and witnessing is typically very powerful, but also community could include our animals, the ones that we have deep relationships with, that that witness us, that are with us through those hard times. Could be the earth or earth beings or places that we go in nature that we have relationship with, again, that help us maybe move through, that get us through, that mirror something about our state or our experience or the wisdom of our transition, and or the spirit realms. So people have different connections with that, maybe ancestors, spirit guides, God, um, great spirit, whatever that might be. So we like to say to each person, who or what is your community? What supports you? And then looking at how do we want to incorporate this support within the context of the ceremony. And so when we go through the process of creating, which we're going to do right now, um, we'll just be considering these things. And when I guide people, we go through each of these. Okay. So again, I'll guide you through, and then at the end, you may have a potential ceremony to do at some point in your life, and you may actually do that. Or just if not, let this going through this process just inspire you around what this could look like. We are experiential therapists here. Many of us are experiential uh, in the work that we do. We know that when we get it in our bones, we're much more likely to engage this process again versus if we're just listening. Okay, so here are the journal questions, and I'm going to give you 9 minutes. So 9 minutes to actually journal these questions. They're short. Um, and feel free to answer them all or see where you're drawn. Basically, these are going through the different stages of change as a way just to evoke what is true and present in your life. So I'm going to be quiet and let you do this for 9 minutes. I may or may not turn on music. Okay. I will not turn on music, so just so you know. And this is really just to evoke what has meaning for you in your life right now. So so take about two more minutes. So again, you don't need to answer each one. You can go through them or just go write more on any that are really calling to you. Okay. So we're going to go through this process fairly quickly of building a ceremony or considering building a ceremony. And if this is something that you're called to, you can always spend more time. You can go back to this process and fill it out a little bit more. So, okay, number one, the key piece, develop a clear intention that you would like to put attention toward in your life at this time. So what I would suggest is to take a few moments and actually just maybe circle or underline anything in your journal or that you just wrote or highlight where there's emotion, where there's energy. Just first to start to look at if I were to create a ceremony, where is there energy here in my life? You don't have to know what that would be in this moment. And then I want to invite you to choose something, to choose an area of life or a transition. And you can actually do ceremony around something that has ended a long time ago if you never were able to let go or honor it or grieve it. So I had a friend who did a severance ceremony from her ex-husband recently, like 10 years after they were divorced, because he had gone through a men's retreat and they did some of this work and he said, I want to do this with you. Um, or, I had a friend who had deep depression, and when she came out of it, she um like 3 years later, her therapist said, do you know that you're back? Do you know that you made it out of the underworld? I think your community needs to welcome you back so that you know that you're here. So I say that just to say, like, it doesn't have to be something like right now is something really big is happening. So choose an area of life that you want to put attention toward. And then consider within that area of life, where's the energy? Is it toward severance? If you were to do a ceremony, Would it be a letting go of something, an acknowledging of an ending, or an honoring of that? What are you in the middle, the liminal? Do you want, is it something like, help, what do I do next? Or how do I navigate this? Or would it be a ceremony of incorporation, of claiming something, stepping into something? You can even sort of make a note of that. And it's okay if there are more than one aspect that you would want to honor within the ceremony. And finally, now the kind of key piece is to develop an intention statement. So that can be very simple. Like, I'm honoring the ending of my marriage from 10 years ago, and really going to do a ceremony to honor both the gifts and the grief and the relief. Or I am in a big transition of what's next in my life, and I want to hold a question of how do I make the decision of what's next. So it's a question or an intention would be the intention statement. Or I'm going to step into my professional self and honor that I am enough, that I'm more than enough. And I'm curious if anybody wants or needs help in identifying that intention statement. And if you do, you can raise your hand, or just raise your hand electronically, or just unmute. I know this can be tricky, so if anybody need support with that.
Not support, Katie, but I just wanted to express I really appreciate the idea of severance, because when I'm thinking about like my own upbringing, ceremony was celebratory, ceremony was positive, even in the sense of like grief, like, right, like we've moved from a funeral to a celebration of life. And so I'm just really noodling about that now, and about, okay, well, when and where does severance fit in as opposed to celebration? So I just wanted to voice that. I really appreciated that.
Great. Thank you for naming it. Yeah, and I think anyway, in the US, we are lacking in a lot of support for grief and grief rituals, and acknowledging how much grief and letting go that we have on a regular basis. Yeah. Mhm. By the way, if anyone who's interested in grief, Francis Weller, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, is an incredible, incredible book, and he is an incredible teacher, of ceremony and rites of passage. Okay,
Can you
well,
say that title one more time, Katie?
yeah, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, Francis Weller. And
Thank you.
And he's been interviewed on podcasts too. If you want to listen to this work, it is so profound. The seven gates of grief, and just different ways that, the grief of the earth, the grief of what we've lost, the grief of what we lost that we thought was going to be that will never be. So it's quite profound. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully everyone has their intention statement. I'm going to actually come back to that one. Um, so Actually, I'm going to come back to that one too. I'm going to say we're going to go to this. ceremony creation process. Oh, wait, am I going to go to that? No, we're going to go to symbols and symbolic actions first. So if you think about um, what you might do or what you might want there. And again, you can go back if this is something that you really do want to do. You might spend more time with it. So right now, just do a little brainstorming. Symbols, are there things there that actually feel supportive to you that you want to be there? Are there things that you want included in the ceremony? What might you do to represent this? And so with severance, often it is acknowledging. So acknowledging the good, acknowledging what was good in gratitude, acknowledging the sadnesses, the losses, maybe the disappointments, maybe the anger, or it might be letting go of something, and symbols might be burying something, burning something, putting something into water. Um, so just maybe do a little brainstorming, journaling on what are some symbols or symbolic actions? And if your ceremony is incorporation, it might be symbolic action, like for graduation is a degree, that, or sometimes people have it's like something I hold or something that represents this new aspect of myself. You might think of that. And I'll just say some of my favorite ceremonies of the liminal are wandering on the land and talking to the trees or nature and asking it to to mirror something to us or teach us something, to hold an open question. So again, just some ideas here. Okay, for purposes of time, I'm going to move on. Again, you can come back to this, any of this. Um, so another consideration, this is not one of the four, um, the bones, but how do you create sacred space? How do you create intentional space? And again, that could look like so many different things, that could have so many different meanings, sacred or intentional space. And when we do ceremony, it's essentially outside of our normal consciousness. So we begin and end intentionally. That could be with a breath. That could be with crossing a physical threshold, like walking down the aisle. That could be doing a bow. It could be singing a song. But basically, and often it is done with different sensory experiences. So, music or burning something or movement, because what it does is it engages our senses, engages our bodies, calls our attention to the fact that something special is about to happen, something different is about to happen, and it calls us to that present moment. So, maybe just considering, and if you have a spiritual practice or tradition, there might be a way that you center or that you call on that which supports you in the spirit realms. So just think about, how do you create intentional space, or what would you want to do? What could you do if you're doing this ceremony? It could be as simple as pausing and taking a few breaths. And so you could even write that down. Again, it could be a brainstorm right now. What would I do to help me enter into this intentionally? Okay. We're going to go to community. So as you think about this intention that you may do ceremony around, if you were to do a ceremony, who or what supports you? And this could be, again, we're going to just brainstorm. So who supports you? Who do you trust? Who knows you? Who maybe holds the values that will support you in this transition? You may or may not contact them. They may or may not be a part of this, but just start to write that down. Who or what supports you in this? Humans, animals, spirit world, earth. There's no right or wrong. Your higher self. From there, I'm going to just give you some ideas. So there are a lot of ways that you could include community. You might invite people to be at a ceremony, or invite even somebody to facilitate it for you, or witness. Or you could have say, hey, I'm going to go out on the land and do this ceremony. Will you think of me at 5 o'clock? Or will you light a candle for me? Or would you write me a letter and reflect to me what you see my strengths are? So people can hold you in their just awareness, consciousness, or offer from afar. You can find if you have a special relationship with a piece of land and the beings there, that might be your relationship. Or you might place rocks or things in the space to represent that which supports you. So there are a lot of different ways you can call in that which supports you on the energetic level. So you can continue to think, who or how would I like that support? Could be share afterwards with someone and have them listen and or reflect. And the final, well, one of the final pieces, not the final, but when and where will you do the ceremony? So I want you to take a couple minutes here, or maybe, yeah, a couple minutes, and just sit with, is this something that you actually do want to do? You might need more time with it. And if so, where would you do it? Where would be a place to do it? As general or specific as you know, and when would or could you do it? And if you're definitely going to do it, you might even put it in your books today. Or make a next step of how you're going to figure that out. Okay. So a couple other pieces I'll mention. And again, if you are further developing this, there are things that you could consider and or consider in the future. Some of the things that we often incorporate into ceremony, I talked about the sensory experiences, and another one is our natural elements. So earth, fire, water, air, all of those. There are other elements depending on what tradition you're working with. Um, there are more, but these are some common ones, right? Because these are all elements that work with different types of transformations and or letting goes or cleansing, or taking a stand. So thinking about, would you want to include any of the elements as part of the maybe symbols or symbolic actions? For now, maybe just make a note of that. And then there, um, Hoea and I created this, what we call a map of wholeness, where we map a lot of different kind of bodies of work that are often used in ceremony and invite people into their own relationship with these. And one of them is the directions. So the energies and the directions of the north, the south, the east, the west, the above, the below, the center. And again, different cultures, different traditions have different associations depending on where you live on the planet, Northern Hemisphere versus Southern Hemisphere. Our relationships are actually very different with the directions and what happens in those directions, seasons of the year. Um, they go along with, often are associated with the seasons and times of day. So what this does, if this is something that resonates with you, is it essentially evokes, what are the aspects of myself that I need support with, want to engage more, and or are allies for me. So I just mentioned that if that is something that you do have relationship with, you might include that. Or if it's something you want to learn more about, you can do some research. Or inner aspects of yourself. And what that means is when we're creating ceremony, sometimes we're looking at, how is my inner child? So, like the parts of ourselves, how is my inner child versus my inner adult, my inner adolescent, my inner elder? So, sometimes when we're stepping into a new way of being, stepping into our power, stepping into our leadership, the younger parts of us get scared, the ones that, um, have been shyer or haven't been always well received. And so, depending on what the ceremony is and what the intention is, there may be, we might look at, what does the inner child of me need? Or the inner adolescent? Do they need permission? Do they need care? Do they need compassion? And that could be also woven into the ceremony. Okay, I don't think we're doing breakout groups today because we don't have time. But actually, before I do this, I want to ask if there are any questions or comments here about this process, about continuing this process, engaging this process for yourself. And then we'll talk in a moment about doing this with others. Okay. So here are some additional considerations if you are bringing this into your work. So remember, I said the more that you have, that you practice this, that you create your own ceremonies, the more confident you're going to be to help other people create them. Um, so one is, if you're bringing this into your work, don't assume that your client or students or whoever you're working with have any relationship with ceremony and ritual. And so what that means is, one, ask them like, hey, usually I'll say, do you do ceremony? Or actually in my intakes, I ask people about their spiritual beliefs and connections and relationship with ceremony among and other things. But I'll ask them, what is your relationship with this? And typically I'm asking them because I have an inspiration around a thing that we could do a ceremony around based on what we're working with. And I'll say, is this something you're interested in or interested in talking about or exploring? So if they're like, no, heck no, that's scary and weird, then great, we're not going to do it. I'm not going to push them to do it. So how do we respectfully, tentatively kind of bring it in as a possibility and get curious about I'll just say client because I'm a therapist, but our client's relationship with that or students. And then if they're interested, ask them, what are your beliefs? What are your paradigms? Have you done ceremony before? If so, what kind? How have you done that? Where did that come from? And that's more just to evoke their experience, their meaning, their associations as well. And then be ready to talk about what ceremony is and what it can look like. And honestly, I say it super quickly. If I'm introducing it like I did today, I'll say, well, it's, putting attention, we're doing an action or set of actions for a particular intention and putting our attention there, something that has meaning. And here are some basic components. These are the bones, and we'll fill them in. Um, so what is it? What could it look like? And then if you are facilitating, so sometimes I'll create ceremony with my clients and then they'll go do them on their own. But sometimes I do it with them or I facilitate it in our sessions, or we maybe meet outside and do it somewhere. Um, so if you're the one facilitating, consider first, before you even step into that ceremony, how do you ground yourself? How do you create intentional sacred space? And the way that you do it, if it is different from how your clients do it, you might just do that for yourself ahead of time so that you enter in already grounded, already connected to the intention, already sort of holding a particular energetic and space to invite them into. And again, that could look many, many, many different ways. And then guide clients to build something that is personally meaningful, culturally relevant, based on their beliefs, symbols, symbolic actions. So often I'm saying, here's some examples of what that could look like. Here sounds like we're letting go. Here are different ways we can let go. What resonates with you? So I might give examples. And just number one, allow always clients to have choice along the way, whether we're going to do this at all, how we might do this. Okay. I noticed we have 5 minutes. So I'm just going to wrap up and then open it up for Q&A. And I don't know if we have to end right on time. I'm available today if people have questions.
We can hang out for people if they want, Katie. It's fine.
Okay, great. So I will just say if a couple of things, if you want to go deeper in this particular study with us, I do have a couple trainings. One is an in-person on the land 5-day overnight training that is happening the end of July 26th to 30th near Boulder, Colorado, called Honoring Change. And that is really going through this process in depth with yourself and someone else and going out on the land for a 24-hour solo. So it's like a very particular time. And then looking at how do you bring that into your work with people. And then the 9-month training I have been mentioning with my colleague Hoeatea, which is online and it's global. And the next round of ours starts October 28th in the US, October 29th. It's the same training, but it's the morning in Australia, New Zealand, and Asia, and the afternoon in the US. So that is on my website. You can always check that out. We also do rites of passage on the land with solo time, and we have one coming up in August. Somatic Nature Therapy Institute is here's my website if you are interested or want to look up any of the things we are doing. There are also on there's list podcasts and different resources, free resources that you can download. And on here, I have the other website is rightsofpassagetraining.com. That's the one that goes with the global online training. if you go to that website, maybe even both websites, you can there's a way to download a 20-page guide of ceremony creation that goes through all these steps and considerations, has journal spaces. So if you want to have basically this process in a, in a guide on your computer, you can get that there. Okay, I'm gonna stop screen sharing and invite us and say hi to you all. See your faces and yeah, just see if there's any questions or comments here as we're coming to the end. Impressions. Yeah, Erin.
I just appreciate having new language to talk about things that I already do. Um, and then just new language to be able to dive deeper.
Thank you. Great.
Yeah, I definitely have valued this. I want to do one for myself and I also want to bring it in. So I'll definitely be checking out your guide and just always lovely to do any trainings with you.
Ah, thank you. Thank you. Yes. Hmm.
Before people do take off, I mean, we'll stick around for some questions, but Erin and I put in the chat just look to next month for the next webinar. We really appreciate you, Katie, doing this one. Definitely a lot to like chew on and think about. But yeah, next month on the 6th, we will be joined by Laura McDonald and focusing on designing therapeutic adventure support groups. So definitely come back for that. I think Ava had mentioned it at the very beginning that a good way to get involved with AE or TAPG is Service Corps. Correct me if I'm wrong, you get maybe a little discount. So there's
Yes,
always
you
that.
do.
And new
I'm in charge of
friends.
it this year, so I don't know. If you want to bug me, yeah, reach out to Erin or that email in there.
So
Who?
if either of those things are enticing, then do
It's
that.
fun.
Cool.
Yeah, any other questions for Katie?
I'd love to throw out just a personal reflection that I wrote earlier on that I feel delightfully disarmed. And I think it's like just so amazing. Like, obviously the experience you have and the research you've done and the work that you're putting forward is just unbelievable and so much to learn from. But I think for myself coming in, I didn't come personally from a background of a whole lot of I guess ceremony and that sort of stuff. So it was just really helpful to hear like how it can be like a container instead of like a prescription, right? And I feel like it in some ways my mind was worried because I work with a lot of indigenous groups and I was sort of worried about that appropriation piece. And I just felt like every step of this webinar, it was like, okay, and then we could go really into that because it's there, and it just disarmed so much that I was concerned about. Um, and so I feel like just very much more prepared to sort of go in and support some of the groups I work with who do ceremony and all kinds of amazing things, but have been disconnected, right? And are looking for that. So I can't help with their histories, but I can help with maybe a container or a space for them to recreate and find that. And so I'm really grateful for you sharing that with us. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm so touched to hear your experience and just the impact and what you're bringing with you. So thank you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then Katie Asusa from Japan had a comment in the chat, and a little lengthy, but are there any unintentional rituals that arise naturally from clients? And she talks about teaching a class called Camp Counseling, where I asked students to make something psychologically important to them out of natural materials. They shared their creations one by one. Then they began to burn their works in a bonfire. I had not intended for them to burn their creations. However, at that moment, remember that in Japan, there is a culture of burning something important when saying goodbye to it. It was a very memorable scene, but it also means that it will continue to exist in one's heart. So I just wanted to make sure that was heard, or if you had any thoughts about
Thank
her question around unintentional rituals.
Oh my gosh, I think that is a great example of a spontaneous ritual, right? That wasn't necessarily what you were leading into, but then it was like, oh, the moment there was an energy that moved that felt really right. And that would be a great example of a spontaneous, yeah, spontaneous ceremony. Thank you for sharing. So beautiful.
I think it's a great reminder to like let clients or participants like do with it what they need to, and kind of following their lead and not dictating, what it is that we think they might need or want from that
Yeah.
moment.
I'm often surprised, even in the midst of facilitating ceremony, that like if I give it space and invite people in and with their inspiration, something happens that I couldn't even have imagined or planned. And when the natural world, when we're in nature, there's like the weather and the bird, like all the things that kind of spontaneously happen in the midst of it, which is amazing. Yeah. Well, shall we take some breaths together and just do a final ending? So I want to invite you to just again see if there's anything your body needs. This will just be about 2 minutes. Um, and like we began, we'll kind of bring your attention inward in whatever way feels good. You might close your eyes or have a soft gaze. You might make contact with your heart or anywhere else on your body if that feels good. Just a way of being with you and giving yourself acknowledgement. And as we end, taking a moment of breath and acknowledgement for you, for yourself, for being here tonight, for you and more than you. And then taking a moment of breath and acknowledgement for the other humans that we shared time and space with here tonight. Each of our stories and wisdoms. Taking a moment of breath and acknowledgement for all that supports each one of us individually and collectively, seen and unseen. That which is our community in the world. And finally, on our next breath, exhale, sending out wishes that this time together ripples backwards, forwards, up, down, out for greater wellness, health, healing on the planet and beyond. Thank you all for being here, and thanks for sharing this topic with me. And so good to see your faces and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks again, Katie.
You're so welcome. Thanks for the invite. Such an honor.
I'm going to stop the recording, but if people want to hang for a second, more than welcome.